I went through it sort of for 15 years, back and forth on birth control, different drugs, different diets, trying everything. And then sort of I figured out myself how to reverse the condition naturally, came off all my meds about 6 years ago. And now I basically am PCOS free. And I'm trying to help as many other women as possible sort of really understand and educate in the sort of nutrition and lifestyle.
Welcome to the show, Georgie. It's great to have you here after, meeting at so many events, and now we actually get to connect and share your story.
I know, honestly, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been amazing sort of seeing you around Dubai and actually connecting. And you were one of my mentors on the Creative Zone competition thing as well. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, she's my kind of girl.
Love it, love it, love it. So why don't you give everyone a little bit of story, a backstory as to why we're here, what we're talking about? Because we're talking about a really important subject that I don't think is given a lot of airtime, and you can maybe go into that a little bit in more detail. But let's just rewind and give people a little bit of a backstory.
So hi everyone, my name is Georgie. I'm a qualified nutritionist, personal trainer, and now I specialize as a PCOS health coach. PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it now affects 1 in 8 women who are actually diagnosed, but they predict it's 1 in 5 due to just sort of lack of education across the world and awareness. So I personally went through it for 15 years, basically a hormone imbalance condition and a metabolic disorder where you don't ovulate. So you get irregular periods or no periods at all. And because of that, you get increased levels of insulin, which increases your testosterone and your cortisol. And it's a huge sort of chaos of hormones in your body, which then can bring on some really nasty symptoms such as uncontrollable weight gain, acne, hair loss, hair growth, and nasty areas on your face, anxiety, depression. There's a whole host of just really difficult things that women have to deal with. And yeah, I went through it sort of 15 years back and forth on birth control, different drugs, different diets, trying everything. And then sort of I figured out myself how to reverse the condition naturally, came off all my meds about 6 years ago. And now I basically am PCOS free. And I'm trying to help as many other women as possible sort of really understand and educate in the sort of nutrition and lifestyle, and understand actually you can make changes with your diet to really, really help with the condition.
Amazing. What an insight. So how do you know then? So let's go back to basics. I haven't suffered from PCOS, but endometriosis, kind of different conditions, but in the sense of, some of the symptoms that you talked about, I'm familiar with. So I was in my 30s and trying for children before they finally actually said, this is what you have. How does it happen with PCOS? Do you have to go to the doctors? Do they have to scan you? Or is it just you have these symptoms and then you can put 2 and 2 together?
So you have to basically have 2 of these 3 when you go to a doctor to be diagnosed. But again, so many women are unfortunately misdiagnosed because a lot of the doctors actually aren't that clued up on it. So the first one is irregular periods or no periods at all. So I lost my menstrual cycle for a good 3 years, which is obviously quite scary. And then the next one is high androgen levels. So that's basically your high male sex hormones, your testosterone. So they do a blood test. And then the third one is they would do an ultrasound on your ovaries. And what you would see on the ovary is these black dots. And they are basically baby follicles that haven't been released. So it's basically the shell that then coats the ovary. So you need 2 of these 3 to basically be, officially diagnosed with PCOS. However, I've worked with a lot of women, obviously come across a lot of women who actually have fine periods, but they have all the other awful symptoms and maybe not so many follicles on the ultrasound. So it is a really sort of complex condition, I'd say. But I think what it really comes down to is actually how important women hormones are and how much they can influence the body and influence these symptoms. So it is super, super important for us to really take control and take care of ourselves.
Where did you sort of find the answers? I know a lot of it's kind of trial and error and experiencing yourself. I mean, what was that journey like for you when it was like, right, enough, what I'm doing isn't working, I'm going to look elsewhere? Kind of what was that point like?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing I want to stress, and this really is where I've got the fire in my belly to sort of try and educate as much as possible and go almost against the GPs, unfortunately. I mean, GPs are great and, doctors, of course they're amazing in this world, but they are not PCOS experts. And the pharmaceutical world is very powerful where, they tell you to basically take medication to cure something. Unfortunately, birth control does not cure PCOS. So I was basically put on birth control for a good 10 years, pumping my body with all the synthetic drug. And unfortunately, what it actually does is it completely suppresses your natural hormones, and it quite literally shuts your menstrual cycle down. So I went through a really turbulent roller coaster. You're right, trial and error, trying different fad diets, restricting, binging. I got into a really bad relationship, with my body and with food because nothing was really working. I couldn't understand how to shift the weight, how to reverse it all, because what birth control does is kind of acts as like a plaster over a wound. So you're not actually fixing the root cause, because when it suppresses your hormones, yes, it might suppress your testosterone a bit. So people who suffer with acne or the hair growth, that will stop, or like, that will become a little bit better. But unfortunately, when you come off birth control and say you want to come off to conceive, you're going to have a whole root of problems, because all of those symptoms are going to come back, sometimes even worse, with a vengeance. And the worst one as well is to ovulate. This is why we have such a problem now with infertility being so high at IVF, and everyone trying for babies, is because of birth control. Like it took me, when I came off the pill, just over 2 years to get my actual cycle back and my natural bleed, because a pill bleed is not a real bleed. And that's really important. What I really want to share today is, ladies, if you are thinking of conceiving and you are on birth control, like please really, think about coming off, because it will take your body quite a long time to sort of readjust, reset, and get back to its sort of natural level. So yeah, so that was sort of my journey with it. And I guess like how I got to where I am is I did nutrition as my degree, then did a few other qualifications. I basically fell in love with, understanding the body and food as medicine, just really took sort of control of my health, I guess. And I managed to lose about 30 kilograms. And don't get me wrong, I'm a female, we all fluctuate, right, over different times of your life, but I have managed to keep most of it off, to be honest. And I think that is just really down to understanding the types of foods that you need that really work for your hormones. So eating sort of, let's just say like a high GI food, or like something that's really sugary, like a cake or a pastry, that's unfortunately going to have a spike in your insulin. And this is what leads to sort of cravings and a whole blood sugar roller coaster, which can cause a lot of issues for women. The biggest thing for me has been consistency with my exercise, consistency, of course, with my food, but also my business has called it a PCOS party, because I really want to try and let women know that it doesn't have to define you. You can still go out and have fun. I drink wine every weekend, and I go dancing, and I eat pizza, but 80-20% is what we have to look at it by.
I love that. We can be friends. You drink wine and you eat pizza.
Yeah.
My favourite thing.
It's literally my favourite.
While we're kind of on that topic, because it is balance and what have you, and again, been told the same with endo, foods, inflammatory, if there was a few great foods to have, or does it depend on the person? And then maybe a few foods that it's like, you really shouldn't be kind of eaten, or are particularly bad for PCOS?
So what I would say is we don't want to look at food that is like good and bad, right? Because that's when we can develop quite an unhealthy relationship. There are definitely more foods that are obviously more nutritious and healthy for us, and then not so healthy. So yes, what I would say the biggest one is to focus on a low GI diet. GI stands for glycemic index, and this is basically how quickly when you eat something in your stomach, it spikes your blood sugar. So a low GI diet obviously will actually just be a bit of more of a slow burner, so it won't spike as quickly, and it keeps you fuller for longer. Your energy levels last longer. Starting your day with sort of a high protein, sort of low carbohydrate with a bit of healthy fat. So like the best breakfast would be, eggs, a bit of smoked salmon and avocado. That's an amazing sort of all-round great that you're getting your proteins, your fat, and a good carb. The next thing I would say is anti-inflammatories for sure. Like PCOS is an inflammatory condition. So we want to be really feeding our bodies with lots of sort of omega-3s and 6s. Oily fish is great. So like 2 or 3 portions a week if you can of salmon, tuna, mackerel. Seafood's great, and of course just upping the protein as much as possible, whether that's with lean meats, or if I work with vegans, vegetarians, lots of lentils and beans, or tofu and tempeh, they're all great. And then when it comes to sort of, everyone thinks carbohydrates is the enemy. They're really not. I promise you, everyone, we need carbs, and they're actually great and yummy for us. It's just sort of staying away from yeah, exactly, bring on the pizza. But I would say just really try to avoid sort of everything that is beige as such. So your white breads and your white rice and your white pasta, we want to be going more whole grain down that route. Quinoa is amazing. Sweet potato is a really good low GI. So sweet potato fries, girls, if you're out, have some sweet potato fries, fantastic. And yeah, those would be the main things I would say, is just we want to be reducing the inflammation and controlling our insulin as much as possible. Love it.
Like that is really, really, really good information. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious on a sort of a business perspective. You're in the Middle East, you're talking about something that's really quite personal, and we're going to get into sort of being the vulnerable and sharing all that in just a moment. But how do people take it when you start talking about this? Like, what's the sort of, do people get embarrassed, or we're in a fairly conservative country? What's the feedback if any?
To be honest with you, I've actually had an absolutely amazing experience here. Like, I think there is such a women empowerment movement at the moment, especially in sort of since 2022, right? We've been having so many events. I think on Instagram everyone is just like supporting and opening up and talking about these things. I've got a few friends, like my friend Iman, who started Petish, and that's all about sort of women and sexual pleasure and sort of why we're not allowed to talk about these things when we really should be. We shouldn't be embarrassed about this, but it should be all normalized. And to be honest with you, I've really not had any bad feedback, if I'm honest. I actually get guys asking me about it all the time. Like, I'm really proud of what I do and I talk about it all the time. And I'm just trying to sort of educate. And I've had trainers before, personal trainers. PCOS does affect your training as well, depending on your hormone levels and how much energy you have, where you are in your cycle. So I'll literally call people out and be like, do you know what PCOS is? And if they say no, I'll take my time to tell them about it, because it's 1 in 8, it might be 1 in 5. That is such a huge number. And I do just think Dubai really has been, for me anyway, so supportive. So many females are just wanting to just open up a bit more and not feel embarrassed. And I'm hoping that we're all trying to work together to create a community and a safe space, right? It's all about feeling safe, I think.
Yeah, which I'm really looking forward to the event
honestly,
that we're having about that safe space. We've got an event on Friday, and we're talking about that aspect of being safe and sharing and being open and honest, and you're one of our speakers, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's been a bit of a whirlwind the past few months to me, which is great. I started my business just under 2 years ago, really, and a lot of it, it's just me, so a lot of it has been learning as I go and building on the socials and the content and trying to get exposure. But I think the biggest thing for me the past few months has been going to all these events and actually getting a little bit more presence here, and having females come to me and say, oh, you're the PCOS lady, please can you help me? And it's just been really nice having that support and actually now sort of getting recognized. And hard work pays off, I think, when you're really passionate about something and you actually have an answer to help people keep going, and everything's falling into place at the moment.
That's so good. But I do think there's a lot of that coming together, watching from a personal brand perspective. I've seen you at the event, so this is how we're speaking now, and you're sharing more of the messages because I saw you at an event. But every time that we have had an interaction, whether it's been over social media or it's been in person, it's very you are you. And I think that's one thing, which sounds silly, but I think a lot of people aren't them, if that makes sense. And you're very open and vulnerable and share information with everybody, but you are who you are. Maybe kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think too many people aren't, and that is your USP.
Yeah, you're so right with that. I guess maybe one of the reasons why, females come to me and they feel like they can sort of trust me and talk to me is because I pride myself, I think, as I'm quite a kind, open person, and I'm very raw and real on my Instagram. I will talk on my stories, and I've just put on today, I've had a couple of low days, but I'm on the treadmill and I'm picking myself up, and just showing those vulnerable moments and showing that you don't always have to be okay at all times. It's fine. I think some people do try and put on a front and, want to be strong every minute of the day and sort of say, I'm fine. But actually, no, we're allowed to be vulnerable. We're allowed to be weak. We're allowed to ask for help. You shouldn't have to be stuck in bed if we're feeling down or sad, and especially with PCOS, right? 40% of women have reported that they have depression with PCOS, and that is a huge number. I just want it to just keep sending that message that if you are feeling this way, it's okay. It's not necessarily your fault, and it can be fixed. And there are people there who want to help.
Let's talk a little bit about on the sort of the business element, because you've gone into a niche, which again is another really kind of, there's so many people that can touch on the nutrition and the health and PT, but what you've done is gone, no, I want to tackle this particular area. And I'm sure other people come to you that don't just have PCOS, but that's your kind of marketing. And that is so clear in the sort of business and brand space to at least market with a niche, which you've done. And then other people will, find out, like for myself, for example, with endometriosis, I am sure coming to you and doing your program, I will find results in it for me, but you've targeted it through the marketing is what I'm trying to say. So I guess elaborating on from that point, business. So how do you make this a business? Because as much as you're passionate about this, and what does your business model look like? You do one-to-one coaching, you've got an online course, how have you made that work for you and your niche, I guess?
Yeah, so I think, right, my first thing I'm going to say about coaches or like a personal trainer or something, if you are still with a personal trainer after 3 years and you haven't seen results, they are doing something wrong and you need to move on. Okay, coaches should be in your life for a period of time where they help you, they guide you, they advise you, they change some habits, accountability, all of that. But then by the end of it, you are then left, they can go into the big bad world on their own, knowing that they can do everything, and they feel confident and great. So yes, I have 2 coaching programs. One is 3 month, one is 6 month. They both are educated pretty much all the same, but they're very personalized to the female, because as PCOS is obviously different for every woman. So I'll look at their symptoms, I'll dive in deep to their root cause and sort of, really build them a proper nutrition plan. We have weekly check-in calls, which I think is so important for the accountability, to really keep them like focused. And I'm that little voice in their head being like, they can't really, go wrong as such. And the 6 month one is again the same, but we just have 2 check-ins throughout the month. Then I do like one-to-one consultations and some personal training as well. And then I also have my online course, which is something that women can do on their own. It's got, sort of 55 chapters, shopping lists, recipes, workouts. It's a whole bundle of everything you kind of need to know for PCOS, but that's for someone who might be slightly more self-motivated and just really maybe has done sort of a few changes, but because there's so much misleading information out there, this sort of kind of, summarizes it all and really gives clear guidance of what you actually need to do. So yeah, that's just literally a link sort of in my bio, and they can pay and off they go, and they get instant access for life.
Well, you mentioned earlier about, going to events, over the past sort of few months and what an impact that's had on you. Would you say that's been one of your sort of best marketing strategies? Or, it's a lot of people listen to this are owning their own business. What's worked well for you in terms of marketing what you're doing?
It's been a bit of a trial and error. I've been paying, I tried to do sort of an ad campaign as such, on the Facebook ads and whatnot. And I had a digital marketer come on freelance for a bit. That's been really interesting, like teething, you've got to do teething problems, understand what works and what doesn't, where the different markets are. Because I'm online, obviously I can go global. So I have clients sort of all over, predominantly in Dubai though, because I'm based here. So the ads, I would say, does work, but we're still trying to really get it down to a final T, of where we need to be really focusing. Definitely the exposure has been great, really putting myself out there. And you're right, just networking is the biggest thing, right? Talk to as many people as you can, show your face wherever you can, just turn up and be present and just talk, because you never know, like you might meet someone's mother and their daughter has PCOS, and then straight away that's a client. Or like me talking on a stage for 10 minutes, someone in the audience could hear the name PCOS and be like, oh my gosh, that's my friend. What I will say is, because it's still little old me and I'm not making my millions just yet, hopefully we will do soon, I don't have the money, I guess, at the moment to really invest in like proper PR and like proper sort of marketing, but I'm absolutely just enjoying this journey and this process. And I think, every day I'm growing more and building more. And then suddenly I think, I will get there and it will all click. But I quite like at the moment being quite sort of small and being able to have the time to dedicate to my one-to-one coaching, because that's what I really love to do, is actually seeing these women change and seeing them build their confidence more. And like, actually, like that makes me like so happy. And it might not be the biggest money maker, but to be honest with you right now, I don't really care. I'm doing something good every day and it makes me feel great.
I love that you're so passionate about, you love what you do and about spreading that message. And you say it is so much about that journey, because when people go, because you said as well, oh, I'm not there yet, but that yet, it never actually comes, because just a new goal gets set. So there's always,
so true.
There's always that sort of journey piece, and nearly 20 years in business. And there's been so many times, not so much now with all the coaching that I've done in terms of working with coaches, but I'll be happy when I reach this, like now I'm the happiest I've ever been. You're so happy doing what you were doing, and everything else is a bonus that kind of comes along with it. So it's such a good attitude. What would you say is a bit of a myth about what it is that you do, that you'd like to use this platform to set it straight?
Bit of a myth, and this does really upset me, because I went through it and I know so many females who are. I was told I would never have kids by 3 different doctors. Wow. And obviously that's incredibly traumatic for any female to go through. So I will set that straight right now. You can get pregnant with PCOS, girls, okay? You absolutely can. I've actually helped now over 10 ladies who have been through IVF and have been trying for years. have come to me, have been on my program, and they have got pregnant. Okay. You have a uterus, you have a womb, you have ovaries. If you have those three things, you can make a baby. The only reason why you can't with PCOS is because you don't ovulate, because of the irregular periods. So if we focus on that and get your cycles back with nutrition, with lifestyle, with supplements, if we remove birth control, because that's a synthetic drug and it's not a real bleed, I promise you, you can get pregnant. So that's my biggest one, really, because doctors, it's insane that doctors are still allowed. It still happens in Dubai so much. But especially in Dubai, I hear more and more stories about it. And it's just, it kind of blows my mind a little bit that there are still so many females, going to these doctors and they just pop them straight on birth control, and there's not enough education around it. I really had to do my research and had to read books and sort of understand exactly what the birth control does. There is one book that I will recommend everyone on the podcast. They really should read it.
That's the next question I was going to ask you. What would you recommend?
It's called The Period Repair Manual, and it's the natural treatment for better hormones and better periods by Lara Bryden. She's an amazing, follow her on Instagram as well. She's amazing at basically talking about a lot of what I'm talking about. And our menstrual cycles are incredibly important as a female for so many things in our bodies. And it is actually completely insane when you think about it, that us as females that already have such fragile, fertility hormones, we're then dosing our bodies with a synthetic hormone. And here's a fun fact for you. Birth control was originally made for men, and they did the trials on the men. They saw the side effects, so they thought, oh no, let's give it to the females. So there you go.
Wow. Oh, you learn something new.
Yeah.
So I love doing these podcasts as well, because I learn so much on this. I'm grateful for the time that you've shared today. How can people find out about you? How can women, if they're going through this, reach out to you? What's the best platform? Share your details.
My website is itsapcosparty.com. My Instagram is where I'm most active, if I'm honest. So that, again, it's a PCOS party. DM me. I'm always available. I'm very, very on my phone and will reply pretty much immediately. We can set up a free discovery call. I do those for about 10 minutes just so you can have a chat with me. We can what your symptoms are and where you need some help. And then obviously I can guide you in the right choice, whether that's the course or the coaching or whatever. Please follow me, message me, and I'm here to help.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been so interesting, but more than just interesting, really valuable. And that, just like you said, one piece of information shared can have an impact on so many people. So thank you, Georgie, and I will see you soon.
No problem. Thanks, darling.